Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will briefly discuss Chapter 3, the research, design, and methodology. Just some important aspects that you need to consider when discussing that particular or developing that particular chapter, which is our chapter 3, research, design. It is very important to understand this chapter because it influences the entire research, design, and methodology. Here, what do we do in chapter 3 when developing it? We firstly provide the introduction, which will be our 3.1 introduction. We have dealt with the introduction from the previous chapters of how you go about developing an introduction and what does the introduction entail. We won't go there today, but one of the most important things you need to consider when developing chapter 3, it is the model that guides you when going to develop this chapter. If there is no template or framework or guideline, you must consider using the research onion model. The research onion model. Who are the founding fathers of this model? It is Saunders, Mark Saunders. So it's going to be Saunders, Lewis, and Thornhill, because there are three authors here. When did they do that? In 2007. We will only be focusing on certain aspects of the research onion model. It is a framework that guides you when developing or when working on the methodology chapter. But for now, allow me to erase this so that it does not affect the structure of the chapter. So, our 3.2, the first factor that you consider or you discuss in this chapter, which will be our 3.2 in this case, will be the research philosophy or research paradigm. You can use any of those words interchangeably, but I prefer philosophy in this instance. Research philosophy. So, because we are conducting a social research, okay, a research philosophy, this could be seen as a consensus that researchers reach when trying to solve a particular problem. Who is the guru in this field? You can read Creswell and Plano 2018. They explain very well what is research philosophy. You can also read Saunders, Lewis, and Thornhill 2022. Creswell and Plano 2018, they explain what is research philosophy in detail. I just said it is a consensus that researchers reach when trying to solve a particular problem concerning the beliefs and assumptions and so forth. But if you want to get a detailed discussion on what the research philosophy is, please do read Creswell and Plano 2018. You can read also Saunders, Lewis, and Thornhill 2022. They will give you a detailed discussion on what philosophy is. Now, in this instance, we are conducting a social research, a study that studies human beings in their natural setting, a study that uses interviews as a method of collecting data, that uses observation, description of pictures, and so forth. If we then focus on that, the study is focusing on that, we will be using a philosophy called a phenomenological philosophy, which will be our 3.2.1, which will be our phenomenological philosophy, our 3.2.1. 3.2.1, phenomenological philosophy or paradigm. Why is the research philosophy is important? Why is it important in research? Because it sets it sets or influences the entire research process. It sets the tone for the research, for data collection and analysis. So it is very important to choose the right philosophy. And I said you can read Creswell and Plano 2018, who are the gurus of this, people that have actually written more about the research philosophy that will unpack it very well for you. It is very important to understand that the chosen philosophy for the study does affect the entire research. So the method of data collection and data analysis will be influenced by the type of philosophy you choose. We said we will go because we are doing a social research, you understand? And then we will be using interviews as a method of data collection and non-numerical data that will be collected. No numerical data will be collected. It's non-numerical data that will be collected. Therefore, we are using a phenomenological philosophy that speaks to a qualitative research method. Then, if we then use a phenomenological philosophy and a methodology, which will be our 3.3 research methodology. What is a research methodology? It is a process or a plan that you follow when conducting a study. Then, it means therefore, this one is inductive in nature, you understand? It uses pictures, interviews, and so forth, non-numerical data, you understand, in research. Therefore, under research methodology, the plan or the process that will be used will then be qualitative. Our 3.3.1 will be qualitative. Will be qualitative research methodology. Research methodology. It will be a qualitative research methodology. It is very important that you must define what is research methodology. Who can you read there when trying to define methodology? Creswell and Creswell 2022. You can read Creswell and Creswell 2022. They will explain in detail what is research methodology and a qualitative research methodology. This one also focuses on the collection of non-numerical data. You understand? Expression, explanation. It is explanatory in nature. It is explanatory in nature. So it does not require any calculations. It does not require any calculations. Creswell 2022, the title of the book is The Research Design, Qualitative, Quantitative, and Mixed Methods Approaches. It is the 6th edition. So you must go and read that book. You will get more information on the research methodology. So the type of philosophy you've chosen in this chapter does influence the type of research methodology. If the philosophy itself, because we said the philosophy sets the tone for the study, it affects the entire research process. You understand? It influences or determines the type of data to be collected and how the data will be analyzed. Therefore, we cannot say then we are using a phenomenological which focuses on the use of interviews, collection of non-numerical data, and then we use a different methodology here rather than qualitative, which is explanatory in nature. If you do that, you are contradicting yourself. Therefore, your study starts losing meaning. Only if you were using a mixed method, things will start changing. You said this one is inductive in nature. Okay. Having said that, the type of data to be collected, we will have our 3.4, which is our target population. Target population. The target population is the total number of individuals from which the sample will be drawn. Simple as that. Then we move to our 3.5. From the target population, you then draw your sample size. You draw your sample, which will be your sample size. You draw it from the target population. For example, if you're studying, you're using a particular school as your case study, they have 36 teachers in that school. That will become your target population. But you won't use all those teachers because you are using a phenomenological philosophy, meaning which is a qualitative data study. So you won't use all of those teachers in that particular school. Therefore, you need to draw a sample from that target population of 36 teachers, of which, for example, it might be 8 teachers. But you need to state why you're choosing those 8 out of that, meaning which there is what we call a sampling method, which is now, in this case, it will be a non-probability sampling. A non-probability sampling which gives you an opportunity of using a convenient or a purposeful sampling in this instance. Let me not confuse you. You must understand, once you are here on the target population, you need to know who is your target population. Who are the people that are going to participate in your study or have the potential in participating in your study. And from those individuals, you're able, therefore, to draw your sample from them based on certain attributes if you are doing a qualitative study using a particular sampling method. Having said that, our focus is on the data collection, because this particular chapter is the one that determines the type of data that must be collected for the particular study. Now, we are saying the study is qualitative in nature. That means under data collection, which will be then now our 3.5, 3.5 data collection. The type of data will be determined by the type of philosophy that you have chosen. So for each and every factor you choose to use in your study, you need to provide a rationale. You need to explain why you're choosing this one over the other. Understand? How will phenomenological philosophy assist you to achieve the determined objectives in the previous chapter? How will the qualitative research methodology assist you in achieving the determined objective or answering the research questions above? Having said that, under data collection, there are various instruments that we use in research to collect data. But the type of research methodology that you are going to use in your specific study, it's determined here. Remember, we said this methodology, it's explanatory in nature. It means it requires people whoever will be participating in the study, it requires them to explain themselves. Therefore, you cannot explain yourself if you are using a questionnaire. Why is that? A questionnaire uses closed-ended questions. So, it's got predetermined answers. For example, agree, strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Those are predetermined answers on a Likert scale. Meaning which it's not explanatory rather than descriptive in nature. So the participants are not given an opportunity to explain themselves, meaning which the questionnaire is out of question in a qualitative study. Remember, we said we are not using in a qualitative data, the focus is to use non-numerical data. So if it's that way, we're using pictures here, we're using observations here, we're using interviews here, meaning which the data collection instrument, therefore, that will be applicable in a qualitative study needs to be an interview guide based on the description and the definition of these factors. They determine, through the nature of these, they determine now the type of data collection that must be used or that is applicable to a specific study. Now that our study is qualitative in nature, it means the data collection instrument that will be used is an interview guide. Is a what? 3.5.1. It is an interview guide. Please stop or refrain from using these words interchangeably. Interview guide. You can see some students will use these words interchangeably. You hear them talking about a questionnaire and interview guide. These are two different instruments. A questionnaire is applicable to a quantitative study. An interview guide is applicable to a qualitative study, which uses a phenomenological philosophy, rather than a questionnaire which uses a positivism philosophy. So, don't confuse the two. So, the instrument is also very important because it must give answers to the research questions above. How the instrument is structured or constructed must be constructed in a way that it allows the researcher to collect the data that will solve the given problem statement on chapter 1 or answer the research objective as stated on chapter 1. We are saying the study is qualitative, meaning which it's explanatory in nature. That is the research design. Explanatory research design. We said the research strategy in this case will be the case study of a school, meaning which that research strategy is what? Is qualitative in nature. Therefore, the data collection instrument, we even went further to say the participants will be chosen using a non-probability sampling, which you will use a convenient or a purposeful sampling method. That should give a clear indication on the type of instrument that will be used in the study. Going to data analysis, pilot study, limitation and delimitation, trustworthiness, ethical consideration will then be discussed in our next session. Thank you very much.